Welcome, CavanKerry Press community, to another CavanKerry Press reading. This reading series is now in the fall 2021 season, where we'll have a couple of readings throughout the course of this fall season. And today we are celebrating Cindy Veach and her book, Her Kind, which will be coming out next month with CavanKerry Press. Yay! And always routine as CavanKerry Press, we have that pre-launch reading to get the book ready. And then after that, we get the celebratory launch where we also introduce the next book in our series. And as I mentioned before we went live, everyone in CavanKerry Press, authors to staff, we kind of navigate as a community with each other. Everyone with these pressmates are also friends and colleagues. And I cannot wait for this conversation that we're gonna have this evening with guests Joseph Legaspi and Janurary Gill O'Neill as well. As always, on Facebook and Zoom, while folks are reading, you hear a beautiful line, you are compelled by something really hit home, please put that down in the chat. It's really great to see everyone be engaged. It's great to see everyone's faces. And those are things we go back to later on in the reading. After our three poets read, we will have a Q&A session. Also, please, in the chat box, put down any questions. Gabriel Cleveland, our managing editor, and Elena Neo, who is our marketing coordinator, will be making sure that I get all of those questions when it's time for the Q&A, and don't worry, your questions will be answered. As always, please keep on mute. Just so we can give respect and we can honor our authors' work as well as their stories. The order tonight is going to be Janurary, Joseph, then Cindy Veach, and they'll be each reading for about 15 minutes. Gabriel Cleveland is going to drop the link for Cindy Veach's book, which is 20% off right now. Before it comes out, you could be the first person to get it when we actually get the shipment of the books. So please, please, please follow that link in the chat box. And if you haven't already pre-ordered, pre-order. Once we get Joseph, once we get Janurary, their books are also going to be available. If you look in the link in the chat box throughout the course of the night, you'll get that too. As always, as the communications director, I talk way too much. I'm gonna let the shine on for the authors come about. So I am going to read Janurary's bio first. And for now, I'm going to kick off Joseph and Cindy, and then myself, and then we'll have Janurary. And Janurary, thank you for waiting for my standing ovation that I keep continuing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, Janurary Gill O'Neill is the author of Misery Islands and Underlife, published by CavanKerry Press. She is the executive director of the Massachusetts Poetry Festival and assistant professor of English at Salem State University and a board of trustees member with the Association of Writers and Writing Programs and Montserrat College of Art. A CavanKerry Fellow, Janurary's poems and articles have appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, American Poetry Review, New England Review, and Plowshares, among others. In 2018, Janurary was awarded a Massachusetts Cultural Council grant and is the John and Renee Grisham Writer in Residence for 2019 and 2020 at the University of Mississippi, Oxford. She lives with her two children in Beverly, Massachusetts. Without further ado, finally, Janurary Gill O'Neill.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you, Gabe, Elena, and the CavanKerry crew. Thrilled to be here to honor Cindy Veach. I am so excited for her book. Please buy it. Go like the post around it. Leave a comment after you read it on, wherever you post, Goodreads or whatever. Let's support a fabulous new book coming into the world. So I love being the opening act for these two. And I'm just gonna, normally I don't like see the stage, but tonight I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna read three poems. The first poem is a long poem. It's in 5 sections. And since we just have the 20th anniversary of 9/11, it seems appropriate. But for me personally, it seems appropriate because it documents my divorce, my marriage, the actual process of getting to the city we were married in around 9/11, but tomorrow would have been my 20th wedding anniversary. So I'm reading this poem in honor of that. So this poem is in 5 sections. It does talk about 9/11. It jumps back and forth in time. There is a raccoon in the poem. The last stanza has 3 lines in it, and I do swear. Brave. A thin layer of ash, fine debris, probably bone, coated the windshield as we passed exit after exit for the Garden State Parkway. We took detours and back roads while police blocked every on-ramp, blue lights pulsing. Officers in yellow hazard vests stood next to their squad cars as we drove past midnight, my soon-to-be husband, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and me in a 1992 Grand Marquis on our way to Virginia. On the radio, nothing but news and static, all of us silent, sleepy, edgy, uncertain, both absent and present on an empty highway driving past New York City. I would never tell my daughter that some nights I lie awake listening for the raccoon I know is in the attic, but pretend isn't there. The scratching, the heavy scampering, she hears it too. If he were here, Daddy would check things out. If he were here, Mommy would be brave, play loud music to scare it away, pray it does not have kids. Marriages fail. There is no one else to go up there and get the little fucker. On our day in court, my lawyer was late, so the judge moved our case to the afternoon docket. We sat for hours. You on the left side, me on the right, listening to failure after failure, the quick dissolve of marriages into oblivion. I remember thinking, Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. The moment when the judge calls your name and uses such words as irreconcilable, broken, and final, and a swell. No, a surge of tears breaks as the judge uncouples us. You cried too. Neither of us looked at the other or spoke. When I turned around, you were gone. You had left the building. Before we arrived at the hotel, we closed eyes as we crossed the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And before that, we listened to Howard Stern around 5 a.m., broadcast live, trying to find the right words, any words. And before that, you took the wheel from your brother so he could get some sleep. And before that, silence. And before that, you held my hand as we rode in the back seat. And before that, we were not allowed on the Garden State Parkway. And before that, we stopped for gas, sandwiches, checked the check engine light somewhere in Connecticut. And before that, there was a toll on the Tobin Bridge. And before that, I was on the phone with the maid of honor who would ride the bus from Texas to Virginia to arrive by Saturday. I thought she was crazy. And before that, I was on the phone with my father who said, "Be careful," and "I love you." And before that, no flights were allowed out of Logan Airport or anywhere. And before that, you said yes. And before that, I asked, should we go through with the wedding? I would never tell my daughter male raccoons have no part in raising their young. How to love. After stepping into the world again, there is that question of how to love, how to bundle yourself against the frosted morning, the crunch of icy grass underfoot, the scrape of cold wipers along the windshield, and convert time into distance. What song to sing down an empty road as you begin your morning commute? And is there enough in you to see, really see, the 3 wild turkeys crossing the street with their featherless heads and stilt-like legs in search of a morning meal. Nothing to do but hunker down, wait for them to safely cross. As they amble away, you wonder if they want to be startled back into this world. Maybe you do too, waiting for all this to give way to love itself, to look into the eyes of another and feel something. The pleasure of a new lover in the unbroken night, your wings folded around him, on the other side of this ragged January, as if a long sleep has ended. And so I'll read one more poem, which is a new poem. It's a Mississippi poem about new season. He says, I hold my mind well, likes that I put my kids first and have never tried drugs. The lilt in his southern drawl intoxicates me. He likes not being able to have all of me, makes him want me more. Broken finds broken, I say. So when he kisses my neck along my clavicle down to my breast, I break all over again after a drought of no kissing, no touch. How not being chosen can dim any light. For years, I told myself a story I could live with, thought of myself a kind of carnival fish in a plastic bag, floating in my own still water, waiting to be loved. Dumb luck that someone flips a red ring on the mouth of a glass jar, and just like that, I am kissing again, kissing a man so luminous, so beautifully flawed, I can barely look at him. And my mind, done with all its stories, turns to the carnal as I rim the hinge of his lips with my tongue and dive into this quenching. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Cindy.
Oh my goodness, January. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really want to ask you, how does it feel to place yourself literally into a poem or figuratively into a poem with that January line? I think there's something about infiltrating ourselves into our work, but I'll say that for the Q&A. Thank you so much, January. Okay, so now next on deck, we have Joseph Legaspi. So a little bit about Joseph, just a little bit because there's a lot. Joseph Legaspi, a Fulbright and New York Foundation for the Arts Fellow, is the author of a previous collection, Imago, CavanKerry Press, and University of Santo Tomas Press, and 2 chapbooks, Aviary, Bestiary, and Subways. His poems have appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Jubilat, Orion, Painted Bride Quarterly, and Salt Hill. He is the co-founder of Kundiman, a nonprofit organization serving Asian American writers. Oh my goodness. Again, co-founder of Kundiman, nonprofit organization serving Asian American writers. He lives in Queens, New York with his husband. Now, if only I can get him on here. Let me get him on here. There we go. Hey, Joseph, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Beaming in for Cindy's book launch, for her kind. I feel like this reading is that of connections. You know, Jan's poem "Brave." You know, that every time I hear that poem, I'm just wrapped after it. But you know, I've known Jan since I was since graduate school at NYU in 1995, and that marriage, that wedding, actually led Jan to Massachusetts, which led me to meet Cindy Veach and all the other amazing North Shore individual. I had a point there. I know people were like wary that I'm not going to make a point, but Cindy is the kind of person actually that is so generous, not only of heart, but also of action. Like the first year, I believe, that I met Cindy, she emailed me this, like, you know, it's a really cryptic email because she's like, can I get your home address, your mailing thumb up for a chat. So I sent her my mailing address, and several days later, a mug came from Cindy Veach, and it's a mug from Atticus Bookstore, and she sent it to me because it reminded the mug reminded her of me, and I barely knew Cindy then, but that is like a testament of who she is as a person, as a generous individual, and also as a poet, always thinking of others, making associations all the time, making connections. So thank you for asking me, and it's always such an honor to read with one of my closest friends, Jan, whom I think actually read very short. So I'm going to read a little bit short. So Cindy also, I think, needs to read more, right? Everyone agrees? So I'm actually just only going to read 3 poems, like Jan, but they're shorter than Jan's poems. So I'm going to read kind of like my summer poem from Imago, which is my first book from CavanKerry Press, titled Watermelon. And it's actually a prose poem in 3 sections. Watermelon. 1. This morning, thirsty from the drain of night's sleep, I ate a thick slice of sweet watermelon. Cold, the kind of cold that could satisfy William Carlos Williams. Forget the coffee, cream cheese bagel, and bacon. I admit it. I'm fixated with this fruit, green outside, red on the inside, like Christmas. Or my mother painted green, or like the Mexican flag without the eagle and the stripes, but with seeds, which when sun-dried and salted, become the favorite snack food of Filipinos. 2. I once told a tale to my younger sister of how I was conceived. Our mother went out for a walk one fine day in April, maybe June, and she walked down this path in the province, dried and brown and worn, but teeming with butterflies. And the withered leaves crackled under her feet, sounding like wet wood placed on a bonfire. She walked until she stumbled upon a watermelon field where, overcome with thirst and hunger, she picked the largest, fattest fruit, cracked it open with her slender hand, and found me in it. She carried me home, and my true story ended. My sister rolled her 10-year-old eyes at me and said, "Mommy had sex with Daddy." 3. This summer night, I craved the satisfying sweetness of watermelon. I head to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, searching, then remembering that my father had eaten it for dinner. There is no more watermelon. All that remains is a plum, burgundy, overripe, bitten. The teeth marks I know belong to my sister. So I'm going to read a couple of other poems from Threshold. The first one is called Rouge. My mother fishes out her seashell compact. The rabbit-tailed brush, dabbed with pressed powder, sweeps across my face, feathering into alabaster a masking. Throughout my grade school performances, whether stuffed inside a tomato costume or sandwiched between cardboards to resemble a book, my mother has applied foundation, blush, talcum, highlighting mascara to conceal and reveal. Boy and actor, flesh and porcelain. Backstage, her slender finger glides her lipstick red on my lips, pearly puckered. She's leaning so close, we're exchanging breath. Transference from a woman who never leaves the house without her face impeccably drawn. Hair fashionably in a bun. who during the heat of equatorial in preserve our light skin. I am learning beauty. I am learning to be feminine and shoulder the cruelties accorded a boy with flair. I put forth face of even tone, void of harshness. What a beautiful mother does to her son, escorting him to the stage. With the taste of petrolatum in my mouth, hair slicked back with pomade, crowned with a poinsettia headdress, I'm in the garden of a Christmas pageant, perfumed, armored, with memorized rhyming lines and conspicuous anonymity among barefaced classmates. Before a cat-eyed audience, I flower, glowing in makeshift health, rouge like smolder of the cheek. So my mom just recently had like a pacemaker put in, and it's actually, you know, pretty routine procedure. You know, they just put this device under your skin, and you know, her doctor is like one of the best doctors in Southern California, and it was actually like a teaching class, and the students were there as well in the room with her, and she. And she was really nervous before the procedure, you know, but it was a local anesthesia. And she was telling me over the phone, like, Joseph, I didn't even feel a thing. You know, I just like, before I knew it, it was over and everyone's like clapping. They were clapping at me and they were saying that I did such a great job. And I'm like, Aurora, they're not clapping at you, they're clapping at the doctor. But of course, like my mom was like in full regalia. Like she was all makeup up and like she had her hair in a bun and like she was prepared for her operation. So that's my mom. That's Aurora, you know. She's doing fine, by the way. So she's good. So this is my last poem, and then I'm gonna have Cindy regale us with her you know, poems from her new book. So thank you, CavanKerry. I see Joanne there as well. Thank you, Joan, for having us. And again, thank you, Dimitri, Gabe, you know, crew called My Mother's Suitors. The moment my mother tells me she'd fallen out of love with my father, the Santa Ana winds still for a wing-beat second, and the lemon trees shudder in the backyard, their fruits falling in a singular hushed thud. It is a quiet shaking. I sit across from her at the kitchen table, a man now, new to shaving. The knowledge is no revelation to me, not a throbbing secret made flesh, not a downy egg sack of spiders. Rather, for years, this lovelessness skulks in our household like mice with bellies full of rice. How did I earn this disclosure? And why, after a slippery fingered dinner of sweet pork sausages and sliced tomatoes swimming in fish sauce, the Santa Ana resumes its torturous blast, then speaks of past suitors, those who brought her gifts of rosewater, sugarcane, and summer melons, the jet setters who promised her the lavish gems of Kona and Hong Kong, lovers who mastered the Roomba's oceanic waves, the tempter's hip sway of the tango. It is astonishing what sustains a person, what we live on, how my mother has blossomed with age as she savors her secret history. I can't help but envision her by a window, leaning into the night as her serenading suitors gather below her, surrounded by sampaguitas, luminous children in moonlight. Thank you very much. Buy Cindy's book.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Yeah, buy Cindy's book. The link is going to be in the chat box again. Joseph, thank you so much for your poems. You know, I'm in love with your mother poems always, and I'm also in love with your generosity. I appreciate you. And now I am going to beam you out. So say goodbye to everyone. Okay, now let me get Cindy back here, who we've all been waiting for. Hi, Cindy, how are you?
Hey, Dimitri. Hi,
Oh my
everybody.
gosh. It's so great to finally have you on the Zoom, but actually just be here for the reading. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that has been here, both on Facebook and on Zoom. We have 54 participants in our Zoom right now. We have several folks watching on Facebook. Let me get Cindy's bio out for her kind for this book. Again, the link is going to be in the chat. Please get that. And also please start ruminating on these questions. We're going to have a conversation right after Cindy's reading. So if you have any burning questions about what's been going on, please feel free to put that in the chat box. So Cindy Veach is the author of the poetry collection, Gloved Against Blood, CavanKerry Press, a finalist for the Patterson Poetry Prize and a Massachusetts Center for the book Must Read, and the chapbook Innocence, Nix Me, as well as co-author with J.D. Scrimgar, which I did see in the Zoom, and I apologize if I said that name wrong, of the script Imprisoned, 1692, produced by the Essex National Heritage Commission. Her poems have appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Agni, Chicago Review, Michigan Quarterly Review, Poet Lore, and Prairie Schooner, among others. She is the recipient of the Salt Hill Journal's Philip Booth Poetry Prize, yay, selected by Mary Ruffel, and the New England Poetry Club's Samuel Washington Allen Poetry Prize, selected by Marilyn Nelson. Without further ado, please join me with a round of applause for Cindy Veach.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I don't have the book in my hands to read from, so I'm going to read from the screen. Thank you, Jan and Joseph, for being here, for being such wonderful pressmates and wonderful friends. Those great readings. And thank you to CavanKerry Press, to Joan, Dimitri, Elena, and Gabe for bringing this book into the world. And thank you to everyone who is here. And I'm really moved. There are friends here from college, from grad school, from my book club of 20 years, poetry friends. It's just former colleagues, really moving. Also, my daughter is here, and Kettner with her 3-month-old daughter, my grandchild, Josie. So a little bit about the book. In 2016, after living in the Salem area for over 20 years, I stumbled on the Salem Witch Trials Memorial when I was cutting through a side street. Up to that point, I had succumbed to the witch kitsch narrative of modern day Salem. But for some reason on that day, at that place, I was changed. These were innocent human beings who were murdered. I decided to write a poem about each of the 20 victims, and this became a chapbook. At the same time, I was experiencing the end of a long marriage, and Donald Trump had been elected president. And in my mind, these things were connected with the witch trials, and in particular with the female victims who are represented in her kind. Many of the poems incorporate text from the trials, and sometimes I might do little quotation marks for some of them, just so you know that those are actually verbatim words from one of the victims. I witch. So what if I woke up changed? It's not like I'm a wild hog or some evil thing, not a real hog, that follows you home, jumps into the window, a monkey with cock's feet with claws. Don't believe what my accused. The fact sits on the side of the prison where they kept the accused in chains in 1692. I came here with a silk scarf, worn loosely at the neck, borders looped with colored thread. He came with daisies, dark chocolate, and proclaimed, "My wife came towards me and found fault with me." Downstairs in the dungeon, they chained us to the walls, to keep our spirits from escaping in the likeness of a bird. Spectral evidence was testimony in which witnesses claimed that the accused appeared to them and did them harm in a dream or a vision. And this was allowed in the courts during the Salem witch trials. Spectral evidence. Because she said she saw, and therefore these pinholes in her skin, on one arm to be exact, look how they crisscross, make a doily of the flesh. And because she said she saw you, not you, take a small pin from your pocket, a straight pin with a flat head. And because she said it was, therefore you, therefore not a dream, puncturing its pore. You in the flesh, not flesh. Rebecca Nurse of the accused, hanged July 19, 1692. At first, the jury returned not guilty, to which the judge said, retire and reconsider the not. After all, she had not answered the question she had not heard. Guilty of being hard of hearing, maybe mouthing what? Guilty of having a temper, arguing with neighbors. Guilty too of piety, 39 attesting to her deep devotion. Still, the afflicted swore it was her apparition that did the pinchings and prickings of the flesh. And in court, when she raised her arms, the afflicted raised their arms. And when she inclined her head, the afflicted inclined their heads. The title of this next poem is attributed to Donald Trump. You are witnessing the single greatest witch hunt in American political history. Martha Corey, hanged September 19, 1692. It's true my husband testified against me because of the ointment and the sick mutt, the hipped ox, and that night he saw me kneel down at the hearth as if at prayer, but heard nothing. In the end, he refused to speak out against me. But when those children cried there was a yellow bird who suckled my fingers, the judges deposed me. What bird was that the children spoke of? What bird was it? The devil did not take my shape and hurt these. I know nothing of the yellow bird or witchery. My mistake, I bore an illegitimate child, Benoni, son of my sorrow, and dearly loved one. What bird was that? I wake up to a bird calling, cheat, cheat, cheat. What bird are you and whom do you call? You caught me sleeping with the windows open. What sounds like footsteps in the woods, squirrels scurrying through dead leaves. Things are not what they seem. When will new leaves arrive? There's no one here. The greening has begun. No. What season is it? What sky dare be so blue? And why those words? Spring comes despite you, little cheat. Nest builder, where are you? Your hungry ones are coming, shrouded in shell. Speak up, tell. Tornado warning. When I think about it now, I am fearless. But sometimes I still hear the hum of our minivan coming back from Iowa City. That 2-lane highway with too many white crosses, troopers flagging us down, ordering us to lie belly down in the ditch. Iowa sky, imperial sky. Every spiny tendril that drops from a dark cloud reminds me of the bed fear made. Silence meant trouble, a brewing. I prayed for thunder. I welcomed the cackle of lightning, rages, yelling matches, but a sudden drop in pressure. Good purpling moving over our house slanting into shadow. I went down to the cellar to weather each storm. Tornadoes are cruel. Of course, I had to leave him. ogre. Having come to a field, having come to a creek in a field, having come to seek out the beast in the knee of the field by the creek, the beast that lives in my field by my creek. Having come to this apogee without a bead of belief in the hour of my need, having come in the hour of my need to my field by my creek and found him in my field by my creek, having come and refused to get down on my knees in my field by my creek, having come, having refused him, come now, Circe, disarm him. Woman climbs Statue of Liberty in protest. Teresa Patricia Okumu, convicted of trespassing, 2018. She said, I climbed to protest our nation's zero tolerance immigration policy. She said, I climbed to abolish ICE. They said trespasser. They said disorderly conduct. When she sat on the skirts of Lady Liberty, we watched them climb after her. They said, get down. Our hero said, I'm not discouraged. She made her bed and we watched and cheered and put a curse on those who wanted to arrest her for protesting, putting children into cages. Oh yes, we witches watched her carry our truth up and over that ledge like a beautiful soothsayer, strong and live. Goodbye, dark ages. We climb with her. We climb with her. Hold on. I filed for divorce and sundry other acts of witchcraft. Therefore, I am the earthquake and its tectonic plate, a rock chucked into a languid lake. I am the headache that keeps you awake, an unexpected snake at the end of the rake, a rock tossed into a placid lake. I am the shake that rattles the gate and the faux pas that deflates the cake, a rock dropped into a flat lake. I am a plague outbreak, the thirst you can't slake, a rock flung into a tranquil lake, and the rip in something opaque. I am the damn stake in the landscape, the fire break that forsakes, a rock cast into a still lake, the mean old drake, the keepsake that's fake, a rock hurled into a serene lake, the cause of your toothache and the failed windbreak, every mistake, a rock pitched into a quiet lake. I am the one to hate, no one's namesake, the earthquake and its tectonic plate. I think I just have 3 more. Trump has called the investigation a witch hunt 84 times. Martha Carrier hanged August 19, 1692. They said she brought smallpox to Andover. They said she killed her father and brother, making her a queen in hell, AKA landowner. Neighbors testified it was none other than Goody Carrier who haunted them at night. They said she bit Sue Sheldon, threatening to cut her throat because she wanted her to sign the book. She stuck a pin in dumb Ann Putnam, killed Samuel Preston's cow for being very lusty. And there was that devil man whispering in her ear. Somehow she caused the death of Alan Toothaker's cat. For these complaints, though each one was a lie, she was condemned by the grace of God to die. He punishes me with flowers. Knowing they're my favorite, he brings red Gerbers to the settlement meeting. Guilt schleps them back to my apartment. Guilt places them in the living room. I can barely look at them on the borrowed coffee table. Watch how I avert my eyes when I walk by. I decide to help them die, withhold water, resist investigating the stems for telltale signs of rot. They were scarlet, now they're darker, they're dried up blood. They sit there and insinuate. And the last poem is called I Hakati, and she was the I Hakati. Between queen, liminal sorceress, crossroads guardian, story of my life. Who are you today, my ex would taunt. Human form in triplicate, birth, love, death, maiden, mother, crone, moon, earth, underworld. I'll take triplicity over duplicity any day. 3 heads are better, even if one has to be a dog, a bitch. Dog, 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 serpent, horse, dog, cow, boar. Even if it means I am witch, that old crone at the cauldron, stirring willows, dark yew, blackthorn. It took a torch, a key, a dagger to cut away a past. It took 30 years. It took all 3 of me. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Wow. Let me put my spotlight in here. Man, thank you so much, everyone. And Cindy, your work to hear it like finally like off of the page from that PDF document, right? And to finally hear you read it, it's just amazing. And I can't wait for this book, Her Kind, which the link is going to be in the chat box, to be in everyone else's hands. So much appreciated. Again, Joseph and January, I appreciate you all as well. Please, everyone, start filling up the chat with different questions. I saw a lot of praise throughout the entire evening. So please, if any of that's going to generate into questions, please ask away. I will start out with one though. And I'm going to address the elephant in the room, which were some of the longer pieces. So we have Brave from January, we have Rouge from Joseph, and I was really compelled to Ogre by Cindy. So we were talking a lot this evening about memory. So what is the relationship between memory and the idea of ellipticalism with your work? So there's repetition in each one of those poems. There's a returning to an idea and building upon that idea with certain subjects and events. How does memory rebuild itself in the work you present to your audience? Don't all raise your hands at once. Sorry, it's an old teaching thing. I wanted to throw that in there. I haven't had the opportunity to do it in a long time, so y'all gave me the opportunity. But yeah, anyone, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around the question.
So like how
Is that question for me too, or just for the two?
Oh, you too, Joseph. Yeah, please. So how does
Well,
memory
is that the
rebuild
question?
itself? Yeah, how does
Oh, for
memory
me
rebuild
too?
itself?
Or...
Yeah.
I didn't use memory in my poems. Who uses memory for their poems?
Really? Just made it up.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll go first because, you know, I'm already kind of silly about it because I love memory because it's you know, it's a firewood, right? Like it's kindling. It's like a big ass log. And especially, you know, coming from someone foreign, you know, as an immigrant, you kind of really want, you know, a recollection or a connection place that you came from, right? Because when you wake up in the morning in your adopted country, you know, the landscape is so very different. So in a way, memory for me not only serves as a form of creative, you know, resource, but also, you know, it's a source of connectivity, you know, to who I am or who I was. So for me, very much I write from memory a lot because also I'm sorting things out. You know, memory does rebuild itself, right? So when you think about an event, you know, it travels through time, you know. So if you think about something, 5 years later, it would be altered, another 5 years after that. And what I'm also curious about too is how memory is depicted by other people within the same context. So I've always had this conversation with my siblings. I'm one of 5, and I'm the middle one. And we would talk about certain events in our lives, and we all have very varying memories about it.
Mhm.
And I'm really, that is, sibling A remembered it red while I remembered it green, and then the youngest one remembered it as, more of a gray, I love figuring that out, how memory works for all these different people. So.
Right. And I know you were joking about the big ass log in the beginning, right? But that's such a good metaphor, because the idea of a log like burning and growing out of the ashes of this new log and kind of starting that cycle of connectivity again, right? And how it's going to be rebirthed differently each time, or if it's a log 10 feet away, which would be your brother or another sibling, for instance, right? It would grow in a slightly different fashion. And then in Cindy's situation, Cindy, you're infiltrating a memory that was not yours, and it was a learned memory, right? And so I guess the question is specifically for you, like, how do you honor the memory of someone else, and how do you present that memory in kind of like a poetic way that is also still educating? Because the book, in fact, is like a historiography of this certain time period. So how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dimitri. And I think, memory is, it is in your own mind, right? I mean, when we go to tomorrow, today's a memory, and that memory is, will be lost, right? Unless we somehow preserve it, rebuild it into a poem or a story, and it's, otherwise it's locked in your mind, and so it's really our own, the present with what has happened before. So that's a lot of what I try to do, is to connect the past into the present. So going back to the witch trials and those individual victims, I mean, for me, reading the trial testimony, all the transcriptions that are available to the public online through the University of Virginia, was a way to go back to those times. And then it was a lot of reading and studying before I could even begin to write a poem about a particular victim, because it had to get into a certain place with them.
Right.
And sometimes it would take a long time to feel it, and what would the form be? Maybe it'd be a sonnet or a ghazal or something to make it come to life.
Yeah, that's wild, because in order for it to be a memory, you have to experience it first, right? So
As best you can. I mean, it's so historic, but the trial testimony is available, and it's just chilling to read it. I mean, it's amazing.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Jen, were you going to jump in? I didn't want to put you on the spot if you weren't. I just saw that you were.
No, it's okay. No, I'll just, chime in. I've always felt like, memories are, poems are like snapshot perspective, but it's not the entire person or moment. And, I've written often about my kids, and, some of the poems may or may not be all that flattering, but, like Joseph was saying, I mean, interesting how somebody else could have a different perspective. All the time, now that you're getting older, you can write your own stuff and talk from your own perspective. And certainly, with the work that Cindy has done, using, source materials to, conjure, a fuller picture, it's just a newer version, another take on an old tale, maybe one that needs to happen for this time. So memory is powerful, and and it should be accessed and used and honored, just as a source, but really as kindling.
Yes, yeah, the log, the big ass log, right?
I'm going to take that quote to my grave right there.
Yeah, that needs to be put on a shirt now. Gabe, order something from Teespring. We got to do a CavanKerry shirt now.
Off the top, sorry.
Big ass.
Don't worry, Joseph. We'll mention you. We'll at your account, your Twitter account. So this is actually great. I got a question from one of our audience members. So since we have so many different memories and some of those vignettes are really standing out, how do our three poets decide what memories to actually focus on? Because we're in a constant state of receiving those memories. How do you choose what memory to actually turn into a poem? Or in Cindy's case, how do you choose what situation to turn into that poem?
I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of chooses me, I feel like. Chooses me. And, it's like, for me, Degas, who kept painting dancers, right? I mean, I think there's just that we keep. A lot of memories I don't write about, but just certain things that. But I think bottom line is it chooses me. I really don't choose it.
Yeah, that's the same for me too. I think a lot about all the memories that we're making. Even now, this is a memory, right? And so it's pretty special. Ones failed ones, the failed poems that start out with so much promise and we're just never to fruition. But when you think about the amount of poems that do get written, against all the memories we're making, I mean, it's remarkable that there's something about the ones that do become poems. Like those are the ones that are meant to be written at that time, at that moment, whatever inspired us to do it. There's something in our psyche.
Oh my God, did we all freeze?
Wait,
Wait, did we all freeze? Everyone froze on me. Are we here?
Yeah, you're freezing a bit.
You're freezing.
Okay, I should actually start doing really good poses if I freeze. Because I really hope y'all didn't catch me in a really unsavory pose. January, whatever you said was enlightening. All right, what about now? I just readjusted my computer.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Okay,
good.
Was it a savory pose? Was it unsavory? Be honest.
You're fine.
Okay. Okay, January, I'm pretty sure everything you said was so enlightening. And I'm gonna go right into saying that your stuff was super enlightening. I did catch the majority of it.
Okay.
And I did want to talk about that connectivity. It all comes back to that universal connectivity, right? And I'm not surprised that a lot of you said that the poem comes to you. Like you don't write the poem kind of writes you. It's really weird how that stuff just comes back to you. Joseph, were you in the middle of saying something about that before I froze?
I was talking about popcorn and then something brilliant and then you froze and you missed it.
The moment's gone. It's gone.
The moment's gone.
Memory
I really wanted to
us.
hear.
It's
I
a
really wanted
memory.
to hear about your favorite kettle corn flavor. I'm sorry. So this question is from Susan Rich. It's interesting that the trial documents ended up in Virginia, pretty far from Massachusetts. I wanted to know if Cindy had any idea how that occurred.
I really don't know the history. No, there was a project involved. The head of the religion department at the University of Virginia was involved in it. I just, I know the actual records are in Massachusetts, but this was it was a transcription project. So you're making me laugh. All the records were transcribed and then digitized. With the University of Virginia did it, but the records themselves.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's really weird how these documents just get moved around, right? Like I'm doing a lot of research for a current project on the Puerto Rican rebellion in the 70s in North New Jersey. And a lot of the work is in Florida and Chicago, like, I guess because those are other like Puerto Rican enclaves. So it's weird how just work historically moves around, I guess, depending from project to project. All right, great. So another question from Elena. How similar or different is the voice of yours versus the voice in your poems? How do you find that voice that is true, that's true to you to embody? And is it different from your own? So did that make sense? Do I need to rephrase it?
All right. So the question comes from Elena. It says, how similar or different is the voice of your poems to your own? How do you find a voice that's true to you or embody one that's different from your own?
Do you want to take that one, Cindy? Or you want me to?
Go, you go. I'm thinking.
You know, the voice in my poems is me. And I don't often write in persona. You know, I am doing projects where I'm working with source material, but I'm finding whatever connection I can to the material as opposed to inhabiting it. You know, I think what Cindy's done is pretty incredible with her work. So I'm curious to see how she might answer the question, but at least as far as voice goes, it is me. I mean, I know sometimes in poems, you know, I certainly teach this to my students, you know, the speaker, the I is not necessarily the same speaker. No, in my poems, it is me. So, you know, and it simplifies things. And, you know, I'm as authentic and try to put as much as I can into my poems that, you know, that I can allow. I certainly hold back some things too, but.
Right, and piggybacking on that, because I know Cindy is going to speak about like inhabiting certain voices, but you know, I mean, I'm the same with Jan too, and I think we came from also this tradition, you know, like we studied under Sharon Olds and Galway Cannell and Phil Levine, right? You know, the big I, or the big ass I maybe, but you know, we also have to make the distinction in terms of voice or character as well, right? Because I think you know, with certain poems that we do write, you know, we don't have to be quote unquote truthful, right? Like not everything in poems need to be factual, right? You know, there are certain things that we've written in poem might be closer to our autobiography, but it's not part of our autobiography, but it makes the poem, you know, that much more evocative.
Which I did some of that in the Gloved Against Blood and then again in Her Kind. But I still feel like it's my voice in a way. I mean, I guess it's the way I speak or write. But I mean, obviously I don't know their voices. I can't really speak in their voices, but to speak. And that my whole goal was to sort of bring these people back, you know, back to life in a way, let them tell their story, to honor them. But I do think my voice is always my voice, you know, even if it's a persona poem, it still, I feel like comes through. And I agree with Joseph that, I mean, the I is often the I in my poems, but sometimes we tell things that aren't necessarily totally true to memory, right? I mean, the poem sometimes has a life of its own and it goes where it wants to go. And sometimes when you try to push it back down to say, well, I want it to be this way, it doesn't work. And you just kind of have to let it happen.
From Teresa Silverman, who asks, does writing about an event from your memory or experience create catharsis? And is that what you are striving for?
I am not striving for catharsis. I'm striving to capture a moment and maybe transformation.
Yeah.
You know, I say often that I work in service of the poem. So You know, I try to discover what I don't know about the moment and the situation, but yeah, yes, it's not catharsis for me. I mean, because at least at this point, I'm probably past that point of needing catharsis. So I can be slightly objective about it, at least when I start. And the poems that I write that are seeking, you know, I don't know. The ones that don't work well for me are the ones that the two, or it feels like. So I'm always trying to search for what I don't know, but it's not necessarily a catharsis.
Right. And I think also catharsis kind of just limits, you know, the process, right? You know, I mean, it's like a one goal thing. But like Jan said, you know, for me, it's, you know, it's me trying to figure something out. Like, for instance, like you know, there's a memory that's been kind of like bothering me, you know, for so, so it's going to make me feel a release after. You know, and of course, maybe creatively, yes, right. You know, you're doing the work, you're putting pen on paper. So there's a catharsis in the process. But I think, you know, generally in terms of like maybe emotional, I mean, it could be other things, you know, right? It could be enlightenment. It could be just, you know, sheer, you know, like trying to figure out, you know, your frustration about something. So yeah. Own thing, you know, like you kind of just want to be acrobatic in one poem, or you could be, you know, you want to just, you know, be funny in one poem, you know?
Yeah, and Teresa, it's not cathartic for me either. The memory could be a trigger for the poem, but in the poems, I'm always trying to find out what I don't know, you know? I mean, may not even know why that particular memory is triggering me to write something, but then the poem becomes sort of the journey of figuring that out and taking me someplace new. So it's sort of a little adventure, you know? But, and I agree with Jan, you know, I let the poem, the memory's in service of the poem, basically.
All right, thank you for those reading last about that. In the relationship between memory and place, how a place can provoke things. Cindy, I was struck by how the Salem burial ground provoked your initial project. And then for Joseph, the relationship between homeland and the immigrant experience, and then maybe your time in Mississippi provoked new work.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I wish I had an answer of what happened that day that I really stumbled on this memorial. I don't. I mean, I don't know whether, you know, was the time right? Was things that were happening in my own life? Was it just a combination? But it was like a portal opened or an epiphany for me. And, you know, I'm waiting for that another thing like that to happen. So I can start my third book, you know? I mean, it was just, it was place. I mean, it obviously was place related. I can't explain how it inspired me to write. Just, I don't have an answer for that. I never know when that's going to happen. But I think place is powerful, really powerful.
Stuff like a poet of play, you know, like write. You know, I mean, one of the first things I ask someone is where you're from, right? You know, like, you know, someone who immigrated when I was 12. You know, you know, I mean, my constant frame of reference is that of dislocation, right, and uprootedness, right. I'm never in a way like in the right place, you know. So I'm always so curious about like migration and movement and home, the idea of home, the idea of place. Actually, you know, like, you know, all these continents in an Earth-like, you know, world, and I would actually draw borders, and I would name individual countries. You know, I would just make up names, you know. So, and I was really big on maps, you know, when I was growing up. So I think this like constant, like I'm, just again, uprootedness, dislocation, what is home, travel, those are all very, very interesting things to me. So, so place definitely, it's a great way also to root a poem, place. So.
Yeah. For me, well, place is important, certainly. And when we went to Mississippi, we were there in 2019 and 2020, and I was tied into the land and the history and looking into the lives of Emmett Till and the enslaved people. I mean, it was incredible, and I was struck by how I just could feel the trauma in the land, years and years of history just welling up. And I was also struck by how beautiful a state Mississippi is. I've lived in Massachusetts almost, I guess, about 20 years. And I have some Massachusetts poems. I'm from Virginia. I have very few Virginia poems. So it's interesting to be in this stage in my life and to be able to draw on place and location and let it inspire me for new work. I mean, I don't know if I could do that 20 years ago. I wasn't as tied to place. I was, I'm writing about other topics, but now, and I will say, as of late, I mean, having this time during the pandemic to focus and dwell and meander and consider, it's brought a lot of new writing to the surface, as it has for many of us.
Thank you for all your amazing replies. I'm gonna quickly take over this time and read Gabe's question to all of you. So from Gabe, each of you write intimately about the joys and heartaches of domestic life, a kind of open heart surgery on your personal experiences, laid bare for all to read. How do you face and rise to the challenge of sharing that which is so often guarded vigilantly from the public eye?
Wow, that question is like a soap opera in itself.
Gabe.
Drama. I don't know if my answer can actually come close to the grandeur of that question, so I'll leave it up to the women.
Oh,
I don't have a domestic life. Like, I'm married and that's it.
That's domestic.
It's boring.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's making fennel. That's how we roll.
Well,
So.
let's see that poem.
Well, I have to say, January encourages me to put it out there, because it is hard to it's one thing to have it in print, but it's another thing to read it. And today those were some personal poems. My daughter's on this on this Zoom, and I knew she was going to be hearing it, but she's incredibly supportive. And Jan's very encouraging, but it is, that is challenging to put the domestic and the personal out there. But I think to do it in a way that is, I mean, the writing hopefully is, not doesn't make it overly personal in a way, through imagery, through form. But these are important things to write about, and they're universal. Jan's writing about her marriage and divorce. I'm writing about that. I mean, these are things that are they're human, and
And what we're doing here as poets, we're creating art, right? So in a way, like when we have this poem, right? In a way, like, I mean, the source might be, personal trauma or autobiography, but I think, once the poem is out there, it lives on its own, right? Like for me, like I tell them, like, oh, that's not me anymore. It's the poem. So in a way, like I have that removed, and I'm lucky that I can write about my family freely, because and intimately, and it's because they don't read. They don't read my poems, so that frees me up. So.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I'm sure it's true for Joseph and Cindy. I don't think we really put anything out there that is embarrassing or difficult for our family. Maybe difficult, but like, you know what I mean? I don't think we do anything that's disrespectful. And I'm my poetry is of the everyday, and sometimes my poetry is, I'm going to get popcorn. Those poems not everybody sees. I mean, since we haven't been doing all that much, during the pandemic, I bought a bird feeder. So, just like everybody else, I've been writing about birds coming to the feeder. I can't tell you how many bird feeder poems I have. You probably see them, but that's okay. That's the poetry of the everyday, and it's practice, and you just do it. And then, you can write another poem about it. And every time you do it, you get better, or you learn something about yourself, even if it's a terrible poem, there's learning. And, it does, we're a little removed from it. It does become art, so we have some distance from the subject matter. So.
Yeah, it's so prismatic, right? Like, I speak to students sometimes and it's like, well, how many flower poems can there be? And it's like, well, how many fingers do I have on a hand? Or like, what's the biggest number you can think of, right? It's exponential. There's always a different way to enter a poem and enter the thought. And basically there could be a poem about anything of the everyday, right? Because we could find those smaller moments. And I think those are so important, those small moments. And that's like what brings me to write. That's what brings me to read other folks' writings, right? Just to take a step back and observe and breathe. There's a poem in there somewhere, as Gabe said in the chat. Thank you so much, Elena and Gabe, for handling everything while I had some technical difficulties. The one spot in my apartment where I was able to find a good spot was in the garage. So there you go. Now I know I gotta do Zooms in the garage. But anyway, thank you so much, Joseph, Cindy, and January, for such a lovely evening of words and laughter and more words and big ass objects. All of you are so appreciative. And it was great. I loved this kickback format. I knew it was going to be something special when Cindy was like, I don't want to read with one person. I want to read with two. And then she picked both of you. So yeah. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff.
I couldn't choose one over the other. I mean, come on. It had to be
no
both
way.
of them,
I'll choose Jan any day.
I would choose you, Cindy. No, I
choose you too, Cindy.
I'll choose you. I love these two. I would fight any, I'd fight anyone for these two. So I'm thrilled for Cindy, and it's just a joy to Joseph. And I texted him a little earlier, and I was like, we've got to figure out a way to read in person. I can't wait for all of us to get back in person, whatever, outside, inside, hopefully we make it there. But I love you guys. I'm glad we did this. Thank you, Sid. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I asked everyone to
everybody
unmute so we can applaud.
Yeah, please unmute. Say your regards on your way out, please. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Buy Cindy's book.
Great.
Good job, Cindy.
Buy multiple copies.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jan and Joseph, for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Wonderful. Wonderful reading.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Peace.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Great time. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.